All right, so what I'm going to show or cover uh, today with our class is sort of moving from, I guess, sort of away from observational type drawing into more how do you begin to understand more what it is you're looking at, and then begin to imagine it for when you have to work on things that you can't see. And so moving once again from the two-dimensional into the three-dimensional. As I mentioned before, as an artist, one of the complex things why a drawing is complex is because you look at something three-dimensional, that is three-dimensional. You have to visualize it two-dimensionally, because you have to see how does that work as a completely flat, because you're going to be putting it on a flat piece of paper. And so you take those three-dimensional shape forms, you turn them into two-dimensional shapes, putting them side by side on your paper, trying to create the illusion, once again, that it's three-dimensional. So you do this sort of double flip sort of thing. So what I'm going to go over is something that will help with being able to do that, which is called, first of all, we call them the basic forms. So let me bring this up. I'm going to bring up a PowerPoint here. So I'm going to share this. And so, okay, so hopefully you should be able to see it. So drawing the basic forms. And what are they? So the basic forms, oh, we're missing one of them here. There's, like pretty much everything in art, nothing is going to be in full agreement. Different artists are going to agree differently about these sort of things. But these, first of all, to explain what we mean by the basic forms. The basic forms are the geometrical, okay, so first of all, form. When I use the word form, I mean a three-dimensional shape, okay? So that a circle is a shape, but this, in the picture, we would call a sphere, so that is a form, okay? A square is a shape, but a cube or a rectangular prism, as in this one, is a form, okay? So everything we see around us, just like we can break it down into shapes and lines, we also can break it down into a combination of our basic forms, okay? So these are typically what we go off of: your cube, your sphere, cylinder, and cone. Sometimes you'll see artists will, and then also add pyramid into it as well. But in a sense, a pyramid is a combination of the cube and the cone, and so that's why a lot of people don't include it in there. Okay, so once again, everything we see is a combination of these, okay? So a wheel is simply a cylinder. That's an old computer screen monitor, which would be a cube, a light bulb, a sphere, okay? And it's variations, right? In a sense, a light bulb really is a cylinder and a sphere put together, okay? So they're always putting them, yeah, like you can't, like for example, you can't just reduce the head to just a sphere like is done in here, or a shoulder. But this does give you a rough idea of what we're talking about, okay? And then, yeah, like that, like I put on here, there should be more spherical forms here, and then, and here as well, and moving on, okay? And then it gets a little carried away. So, but they call them the basic shapes, sphere, and so on to the forms. And then what we do is we begin, when we're drawing, we try to see those and imagine those in it, okay? So whether it was something simple, like in this one, just a simple line drawing of the dog and the overall thing, but even the parts, okay? Like even a nose, seeing that as a spheres and cones and spheres, okay? The muscles first, so they even break it down to your primary is a cone, or sorry, a cylinder, and then these are all based on stretched spheres. This part is sort of, based on the cube, and so on and so on. Okay, and we can keep on doing this, seeing the figure and everything around us, all based on that. The head, so here we go again, round, square, cylinder, conical, and pyramidal. Okay, yeah, so this artist separates these two, okay? Once again, seeing even something as complex as this giraffe. But yeah, again, you have to understand that you have to, stretch and twist and, squish them in order to make it work. But one of the reasons, why do we do this? Because it helps us to understand two things: how to see it three-dimensionally, even though it's on a two-dimensional page. But then really when it comes to shading, we then understand how to shade something. So if you're drawing this camel, for instance, out of your imagination, and you want to go and put some shadows in this, if you can understand this neck as a twisted and bent cylinder, and you've already studied how to shade a cylinder in different lighting situations, then you'll be able to, basically, fairly realistically or render that with the shading, okay? So that's why artists are always practicing these, okay? If pretty much any art studio, if you were to go to study in a university, you would definitely come upon your basic forms that you would do, okay? And then you would practice those and practice those. So this brings up what we then call our cross contour lines. So was it yesterday's class? So with yesterday's group, I was going over what we call contour lines, and they are slightly different from the cross contour. Let me just see, is there anything more in this one? No. This is it in here, but I'm going to stop sharing this. We can come back to this again. So contour lines, oh my goodness, I forgot to give myself a pencil here. Give me a moment here. Okay. So once again, don't confuse contour lines with cross contour lines. A contour line is, again, if I'm drawing my hand or something like that, a contour line follows the edge of it going around. Oops, that doesn't help if I do it way over there. So the contour lines are the ones that, go around the edge, and then they come into the form like this, okay? But the cross contour lines are basically simply what we do is we imagine, what if there was a checkerboard over this, okay? What if my thumb was a full checkerboard? How would the lines go? Well, I can actually draw them, even with this pencil. I can literally draw them on there. And then how would they go this way? And what that does is, if we can begin to imagine that, it will help us when we're painting and shading, because basically this tells us the best direction for our pencil stroke or our brush stroke, okay? So, you can take any object and imagine it, and then just simply drawing those on there will help make that look three-dimensional. It looks kind of like Spider-Man, right? If you do that on there. But one thing that is good to do, and I would encourage you guys to take a moment to draw these, which is our 4 basic forms. You can do 5 if you want, but I'll do them here once again. So first of all, we have the cube. Try and keep it fairly, it doesn't matter if it turns into a rectangular prism, but we'll get that looking fairly accurate. Cylinder. got that off a bit at the top there. Anyway, sphere and our cone. All right, so I'll go ahead and you know, draw these in. So the cube is pretty obvious. So I'll do that one in a minute. Well, I'll go ahead. So cube is fairly obvious. You're going to follow the plane. So we call it, the plane is just a flat surface. And typically you want to imagine in two directions. Oops, I messed up on my perspective there. Okay, so what are the two directions that we're going to do that in? That way and that way, so that it forms a checkerboard. Okay, a cylinder they would go first straight up and down, and if you really want to create this sense of it, then they get narrower at the side as the plane slopes away from us, and then of course we go this way. All this helps us remember, you know, to, again, following that plane. Doesn't really matter. I see my curves are off a little bit. Doesn't really matter. Now on the top, if we're gonna, I usually imagine that it's hollow, because if I just do a flat surface, it's really, if I pretend this is flat on top, then I would just do it exactly the same as this. But what if it is, because this is convex, what if it's a concave? Then of course it's simply going to go the other direction. Okay, so even without any shading, it ends up looking hollow. And then our cone comes to the top. And then of course they wrap around. It doesn't matter if, you know, your sections end up being, you know, they don't have to actually be square. They can be rectangles. That doesn't really matter. It's just the direction that you're getting. And then the sphere, of course, that's always a little bit tricky, and it can go many different ways, because you can't just draw, because, you know, it all comes to a point here at the top and at the bottom again. So we can do it like this. But like happens with a globe, really, you know, how do we do the side? You know, because if I do this coming to a point, I suppose, you know, I can do that, and that does sort of work. Okay, so that does actually work. I didn't get that so good, did I? We'll just kind of, this one's a little tilted, you know, but you can go like this, or, and then, so you'll see see how I've done that one differently. Okay, and in fact, you can even you know, you can even begin to imagine like that it's going, you know, doing this sort of thing, and it's still going to take on pretty much, you know, it might depend on, you know, if you're doing something that has a, like, let's say, you know, a fruit like an apple, and you really want, especially if you want to make it even look like it's coming down in, you might do something like that with your brush stroke. Okay, but this tells us a number of things. This tells us how our shadows are going to go. For example, I very often have had people, they draw something with a pyramid shape, and then they go to put a shadow on it, you know, so let's say the light source is right here. Here's our light source. So they're like, okay, it's light on that side, it's dark on this side, and so they do this, and this is how they shade it. Okay, it sort of looks right, but it's actually just, you know, it's a little bit off. So our cross contour lines tell us, oh, how will that shadow go? The shadows will follow the cross contour lines, and they go to the point. So our shadow needs to go all the way to the point up there. Okay, so if we don't have a reference, a live reference, a photo or something like that, and we have to do a little bit of shading in our image, or we want to, or you know, we want to get a little more three-dimensionality, we can just remember our cross contour lines, and they will help tell us what to do. And then if there's a cast shadow, it's of course going to come right from the point. Oops, that got off a little bit. Again, cast shadows darkest near the object, and then they fade out a little bit as we get away. You can make it as long as you want, whatever. Okay. All right, so the same, that tells us the same thing here. So if we are with our sphere, we have our light source here, then we can, this tells us, okay, our shadow's always opposite. So it sort of tells us that our shadow side is going to be near the bottom, it's going to be near the top, and I just have to follow basically these sort of curves, and it will, you know, come out fairly accurate. It's kind of hard to do with only a 6B pencil. And then of course, I'll move light source over here. Our darkest side is this one. Okay, so once again, shade like this, and shading in two directions is pretty typical. Layering your shading, not trying to get it all in one shot, but building it up. You know, if you really, it's not like you're not allowed to go against that. You certainly can as well. You know, you can go in more than just two directions. It's not like, you know, we don't make these solid rules that you have to follow. Okay, but that's gonna be your darkest side. This is your medium. And then of course the top is the light side. And then our shadow, of course, would be coming up here, slightly off of that side there. Something like that. Covering shadow right over the sun. Oops, I got my perspective off there. That would be having to go this way more. Okay. It's a terrible looking shadow, but I'm going to spend more time with it. Once again, if our light source is here, then we go in this way. And now we really want to try to get these to curve as we do these. And I'll get our core shadow. The darkest part of the shadow is not the edge. There's something that's called reflected light. So the core shadow is just slightly away from the edge. And this is hollow, so it's going to be from the other side because the sun can see that side, but it can't see this side. Anything in shadow, you can just sort of imagine. If you're standing here, you know, you can't see the sun, so that also helps tell you where your shadows go. And then, of course, once again, if you want to put a cast shadow. If you're ever doing a drawing and you want to throw in cast shadows, it's safest to just make them, like, unless you really have a understanding or you have a reference, but if you don't have any sort of reference and you want to put in a cast shadow, just keep it as horizontal as you can. You can, even this one, this is all, that's a bit of a mess. I'd have to play around with that more. I'd have to think about and imagine, because there should be more of a corner there and everything. But anything on a sphere. And then always just make it a little bit darker when it comes right to the object. Okay. Yeah, so those are the basic forms. I was going to show you how, again, an example of how we could actually do this, let's say with pastel, so for painting. So if I set that off to the side. But actually, before I do this, anyone have any questions on that? Any about that?
Nope.
Nope. Okay. All right. Yeah, I mean, it's pretty straightforward, basic stuff. And actually, you know what, maybe before I do this, before I demonstrate, because really this, working with pastels on this is going to be, you know, a little repetitive of what I've just done here. So how about instead I show you, in case you want to just dive into this, it's already 7:30. If you want to just dive into something where you can really practice seeing the basic forms, because that's really the next stage, is where you you look at an object and then you break it down into circles and spheres and cylinders and stuff like, and again, as you do this, I should probably show you that first too. When you're really drawing, you can go ahead and distort these things too, right? Like you can, you can take a cylinder and you can bend it. And then, oops, I keep doing that, going off of that. And then imagine how would our cross contour lines go then, okay? Because they may change. What if I take my cylinder and I, make it look wider? So if it's a cylinder that's a bit of a cone, well, it's going to follow now some of the principles of the cone. And maybe if I put this, close that one at the top, and of course this, sphere often becomes an egg shape. And then once again, you have to sort of imagine how would the, oops, that one got a bit messed up, but, how would the lines go for that? Yeah, any of these sort of things, and of course, you can make your cube. You can do whatever you want with your cube as well. So this is an exercise that or project I've actually done with students before. It's kind of fun project where we don't just break it down into the shapes, but we create a whole new piece out of it. Okay, so these are called surrealistic animals, and so these are some things that students did. So let me show you the process. So what we do with this, so you find anything. Animals are, I always like working with animals. I think animals are just such really good subjects to work with when you're learning to draw, because it does demand, there are challenges, and it does demand accuracy, but there's so much grace compared to, let's say, drawing the human form. We draw the human form, we notice so quickly if we've made a mistake, but not with an animal. So we take the photo and we imagine the photo, the animal, as a series of basic forms, okay? So you can see here, so we have, you know, we've got spheres, some of them twisted, we've got cylinders, we've got a combination of a cylinder and a cone. And this particular one doesn't look like, that's one thing with animals, because they're natural, you're not going to get many of the cube sort of shapes. So that's usually only comes when you're doing man-made things like buildings and stuff like that, or cars and that sort of stuff. So, but then here's the fun thing, is to then draw it as objects. And if you actually retain the three-dimensionality and follow fairly carefully, they didn't follow those forms exactly, but it still works, and you get this fun sort of surrealistic sort of thing. Here's another one, the frog. Okay, whole lot of spheres and cylinders, and then around the face. I lost my cursor here. Cursor went. The face is, yeah, that'd be a combination of an overlapping spherical cone over another one. But anyways, again, so because it's art, we can break out of the rules, because, you know, the chord, the lines of the music don't really, they're not three-dimensional, but anyways, whatever. It was a very creative piece the student did. Okay, a wolf, here we go. Once again, there's the forms. Oh, jumped there. No, where's it going? Okay, he imagined it as these catastrophes. Cardinal, here's our basic forms. Keeps jumping on me. And he took like a tropical sort of theme. Okay, the dog. Oh, and I think that's the other ones. I don't have any more of the basic forms, but you can sort of get the idea, the different sort of fun things you can do when you imagine, you know, breaking something down into its basic forms. And of course, you know, everywhere you can also go off, you know, the chain, the tail becomes a chain, and so on. This was from a rhinoceros. I don't have all of the initial. I don't think I have any more of the original pictures. You know, that's pretty cool. It doesn't totally follow the, you know, this student really kind of went off of it, but that's fine. This is a little more following the basic forms. She did art supplies. Animal made up of other animals. And that was complete with stipple. Seahorse made of furniture or something like that.
Old TVs. Oh my gosh.
Walrus made of clocks.
Aww.
You know, and again, sometimes it's okay just for the theme, and for art, you know, go ahead and go. They've gone off the project, you know, because the clock is really, the body would be more round. It'd be, you know, have more volume to it than that clock face does. You know, this one is really done quite particularly well. Little bananas and the little, I don't know, lychee thing or something. Pretty cool. You know, here it's you know, sticking to it so exact maybe isn't quite as creative. You know, it's just, these are all cylinders, very obvious cylinders, tree stumps and trunks. And but you know, here's a student that did not take into account the basic forms at all, and you can see it's hard to figure out. They just they didn't grab random objects. It's all kitchen appliances and things from the kitchen, but without at least a general understanding of what are the basic forms of the body, you can see how it doesn't work. So that's why it's sort of a, you know, it's a fun, creative approach to it.
It was made very well, though.
The drawing, yeah, the drawings are well done.
Amazing.
But it's hard to figure. I'm not even sure what the animal is.
I don't know what it is. Yeah.
You know, I think those are two forearms coming down there, the cups, and you know, I don't know.
Maybe the middle one is a stomach.
You know, I think so. I think there's a plate
swirl.
that's got to be the stomach. So it's like a prairie dog, maybe, or something like that, because it looks like he has these.
And then.
You know, you can see
okay.
the nose.
Then it kind of looks like a panda.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
Yeah, I was thinking a bear.
Yeah, maybe. Okay. Whereas this one, you know, the student, you know, just even thinking about, you know, the cylinders of the neck, the big roundness of the rump, you know, it works much better. You can tell what's going on there. You know, in this one as well. Even getting the head to work, you can tell it's a donkey. At least I can. I'm pretty sure it's, you know, they're shading. They did, you know, really they paid a lot of attention to with the shading as well. The whole thing made of shoes. I'll go through these quickly now. Actually, I think this is probably last one. There's a few more, but maybe aren't quite as good. But anyways, yeah. So that's you know, the tiger really made a sphere. So they just grabbed a whole bunch of different sort of spheres and overlapping them, and you know, putting them in place and stuff. And then the color, at least it's a cat. I imagine it a tiger every time. Probably just because of the color that it's predominantly orange and black and white. So anyway, but my cursor, lost my cursor. I can't stop sharing. There we go. There it is. Okay. All right. So yeah, so that's if you guys want, let me just pause here a second.